Hey everyone, and welcome to the MMQB TV. I'm Albert Breer. On my left from the Dan Patrick Show and the host of the Against the Grain podcast, Andrew Perloff, and former Jets and Ravens linebacker Bart Scott. Also, right here in New York City, the host of Maggie and Bart. We're going to begin, though, in D.C. with the news of head coach Jay Gruden's firing. It broke early Monday morning and came after an 0-5 start to the season. Bart, how do we see the Redskins going forward for the rest of the season, and what's next for Jay?
I mean, you have to tear it down, right? And for Jay, I think this is an opportunity for him to take a step back. I wouldn't like to see him go out and take another head coaching job. I think he needs to learn from this first job and figure out how he's going to move forward. When we see these coaches jump back in, whether it's a Rex Ryan, whether it's an Adam Gase, a lot of times, they really make a lot of mistakes. They don't learn the lessons. I think he has to make sure that he can get along with management better. I think he needs to incorporate the whole organization into some of the decisions, because we feel like the rift came between he didn't want Haskins, and before it was the RG3 or Kirk Cousins long term. He has to understand that he's also, an employee, and he has to learn how to play well with others.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about you bring up the point, Gase, Rex, like a lot of the guys, Mangini back in the day, a lot of guys who get their second chance right away seem to make the same mistakes they made the first time. And I think one reason why, it's easy to assign blame. It's easy to say that it was someone else's fault if somebody's lining up to give you a job right after you got fired from your first shot, right? And so you look at some of the guys who've done really well in their second shot. Mike Shanahan got fired by the Raiders, went back. He was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco. Boom, he's great in Denver. Bill Belichick, fired in Cleveland, goes back, works for Bill Parcells in New England, then with the Jets, gets his second shot. We'll see how that turned out. And so there is certainly merit, I think, for coaches to go back and maybe reassess a little bit and have to, get knocked down a peg. There's a little humility to that, too.
I'd be surprised. I mean, let's face it, 0-5. I don't think anyone's going to be calling for Jay Gruden as a head coach right now. I mean, I thought he was a very good offensive coordinator at Cincinnati. I think, or maybe go with his brother, that he'll have to go the offensive coordinator route and build up his career again, unless you think that he could fill a vacancy.
The one thing is, I would say this. I don't know that what happened in Washington was really his fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's personnel fault.
The way I look at it, there is a shot he gets a head coaching shot again, just because the well is so dry right now. It's been sapped because
they're relatively young.
You're firing 7 or 8 coaches a year. Right. What's going to happen? The supply is not going to be there anymore. So I think that's part of it. I would say this too, Bart. I mean, it's like what we were just saying. You're cutting out a tumor when the cancer's everywhere.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It feels like that.
And I mean, he was 5-2 last year with Alex Smith and leading the division. You can't really plan for losing your franchise quarterback probably forever, and his salary's still on the books. So now you have to go out and you have to draft. We talk about taking that percentage of the salary cap and not being able to reinvest it. They still haven't really identified what they want to do with Trent Williams. I mean, that's still something that's unsolved. Yeah. I think now going forward, you talk about how they go forward. I think you assess what you have on the coaching staff, see if it's anybody you want to retain, because you like to keep some type of continuity within the building, so the players don't see a brand new new faces. You hear that Kevin O'Connell's there, Bill Callahan, somebody that's been there, that's respected there. You have to assess, do you think that they deserve to stay on and give them opportunities, much like we saw in Cleveland, and the team got a jolt initially. I mean, somebody's O's got to go this week, right? I mean, it's Miami versus. That both teams are going to have high draft picks, and you would think that in Washington, they don't need a new quarterback. So now they have a valuable asset, because people are going to be wanting to move up to try and acquire more picks to be able to move up and down the board.
So you're going to be able to get,
Right, but you should also trade. Somebody will trade a 1 for Trent Williams. Somebody's going to get desperate to say, hey, we're 1 left tackle away from being. We saw what Tunsil got. Yep. Right? We know that Trent Williams is a better player. Now, I know he has a little less tread on the tires than a guy like Tunsil, but he's a valuable asset now that you have to push that chip in. You have to cash that marker in, because this season's lost. So why not start over young? Why are you going to carry a 31-year-old left tackle? Use him while he's at the height of his powers. Somebody will pay him.
And they have an all-pro team on the injury list. I mean, it's Trent Williams, Jordan Reed, Sheriff got hurt. They find Terry McLaurin, he gets hurt. Darius Geis gets hurt. The center gets hurt. There's so much. I mean, that injury thing, I don't know if teams can be snake bitten or there's a real issue there. The injuries has been the biggest issue last year.
They need to burn sage.
Yeah.
A lot of sage.
I would say this. Just keep an eye on Kevin O'Connell's name.
Yeah.
He's respected in the building. He's been compared internally to Sean McVay. There are a lot of people in that building who are disappointed that Sean McVay got away.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin O'Connell is in a decent position to get that job next year.
Well, if Kevin gets a job, he better call me. It better be my job to turn down. I'll work with the linebackers, but I need at least $1 million.
Okay, the offer's out there. At the beginning of the season, it seemed the Browns were poised to be serious contenders in the AFC, anchored by a young, explosive offense. On Monday night, their biggest issue, the offensive line, came home to roost in a blowout loss to the Niners. So what do the Browns, Andrew, need to do to get back on track?
Oh, I mean, there's so much hype around this team. You know, part of it's us for sort of overhyping them all offseason. I think they need to hand the ball to Nick Chubb. You could see it in the Monday night game. They were forcing the ball to Beckham downfield. Mayfield looks uncomfortable in every possible way. All that pinpoint accuracy has dissolved this year. I think they got to get conservative. All they have to do is survive. Have you seen the second half of their schedule? I mean, they basically have a lot of Cincinnati. They have Arizona, and they have Miami.
Sprinkling there.
Yeah. Well, no. Wait till they get past that game.
Okay.
And then the AFC North is wide open, so they have to settle down. I would rely on a safe game. I would throw a lot more screens. I'd throw it. Give the ball to Nick Chubb.
But you can't win that way, and this is the problem. That left tackle is a turnstile, right? It doesn't matter. Like we said before, Greg Robinson. Yeah. First of all, he's a disappointment, considered a draft bust from the Rams, right? Yeah. So they cut him. He's out there. Nobody even claims him.
Right.
That lets you know that he's not that good.
And that was like the same weekend that Laramie Tunsil brought home 2 1s and a 2.
Right. And then you go back and you look, okay, Zeitler. So now you got interior pressure, right? You can't. This game is one, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah.
And you can make it as sexy as you want to, right?
Yeah.
The reason that Indianapolis can march into Kansas City and take the arrow to the ball and continue to move the line, and Jacoby Brissett has time to survey the field, is because it's built in the trenches, right? And when you have a team that's built in the trenches, you don't need all these fancy Rolls Royces and Ferraris on the outside. You don't need all these shiny pieces. But they forgot that to be able to get the ball to a Landry, to be able to get the ball to Odell Beckham and feature, you got to be able to have time. And what you see, Baker Mayfield running for his life, because teams are flushing him out of the pocket. They know that he wants to rush to escape to his right, so they're flushing him to his left and trying to get into his face and forcing him to find the windows to throw and also to run through, and he's not finding them. He's not accurate. So now he's throwing up lollipops. You see Sherman get the interception the other day. It's all schematics, right? They're forcing him and taking all the lanes away from him and forcing him to have to buy time with his feet, and they're setting traps. The big old fish hook. We watched Bosa do the fish hook about 4 or 5 times. What's the fish hook? Okay, if I want somebody to flush to their right, I want you to get up the field and just chase him. We're going to flush him because we're going to slant everybody inside so he can't see because he's only 6 feet, and we're going to make him have to move to his right so he can see. We know he'll hold on to the ball if he goes to his right because he'll throw the ball to his right. If we flush him to his left, he's just going to take off and run. So we want to make sure that we present a short edge for him, an opportunity to run, and then we're just setting him up for the banana in the tailpipe because we know his tackle sucks.
It's unbelievable. And I think you hit it right there. Like, it seemed way more relevant on Monday night that Greg Robinson was bad than it mattered that Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry are good. And I think you can take it and you can look at the Browns' history, Andrew, over the last 4 years. In 2016, they lose Alex Mack and Mitchell Schwartz. In 2018, they lose Joe Thomas. In 2019, they lose Kevin Zeitler. That's 4 high-level offensive linemen walking out the door. They strike out on Austin Corbett. That one hurt. And then you look at, you look at what they've done to replace them. It's bit pieces. It's spare parts. It's Hubbard from Pittsburgh. Again, it's Greg Robinson. It's not investing the way that you need to invest in the offensive line. And, guys, the big year 2 breakout, right, which I think we were all waiting for from Baker Mayfield. We saw Carson Wentz do it. We saw Patrick Mahomes do it. What do those 2 guys have in common? They were playing behind great offensive lines. No question.
And great coaching staffs, too. I have a lot of questions about Freddie Kitchen.
Yeah. Andy Reid and Doug Peterson aren't bad. Okay. After rolling through 3 so-so teams, I guess, at the start of this season, the Cowboys have lost 2 in a row to 2 serious contenders, the Saints and the Packers. Bart, what do you make of these wins and losses? More indicative of how the season is actually going for the Cowboys, or a blip on the radar?
I was persecuted. I was.
Oh, come on.
I had people slide into my DMs. I didn't even know who these people were. I was attacked. I said, hey, I wouldn't pay Dak Prescott $40 or $30 million when I know I can get a guy like Teddy Bridgewater for 10 to 15 next year in the opportunity. Man, I was persecuted. And then what happened? Drew Brees went down. And then Bridgewater got in the first couple games, and it didn't look so good. But now look at him.
Yep.
And Bridgewater, they got they got front row seats when they came in and they lost to the New Orleans Saints.
Yep.
I said before, Dak Prescott is a stabilizer. He's not an elevator. He can't elevate talented players to punch above their weight. He has everything you would want in an offense.
Yep.
He has two gadget guys in Cobb and Austin. He has a great vertical guy in Gallup, and he has an worldly talent in Cooper. Then he has one of the best running backs, top 5 running backs in the game, best offensive line in the game. He loses one offensive lineman, and everything goes crazy. And he still has 2 All-Pros out there protecting him. Right? He needs all things to be perfect. So I wouldn't panic right now, but it's cause for concern because now Dak is losing money. The first 3 weeks he was winning money. I mean, it was homecoming every week. I mean, he went against the Eli-led Giants. He went against the Dolphins and the Redskins.
Yep.
Everybody can put up all-pro numbers now. But now what happens is now without Ezekiel Elliott, teams are focused on taking Ezekiel Elliott away and forcing him to beat you. And yeah, he's put up some gaudy numbers in garbage time, but did we ever feel that game against the Packers was really close, that it was really in doubt? No. Those are all numbers that he padded his stats. When it came down to it, he turned over the ball 3 times. So is there as good as they looked the first 3 weeks? Or is they the team that we saw the last 2 weeks? I think it's somewhere in between, just average enough to get Jason Garrett fired.
Ooh. Well, I like the
It was tough, Bart.
You see
Gotta keep it real.
Fort Worth Star Telegram column by Clarence Hill that a lot of Cowboys reacted to where Clarence claimed they were sniffing themselves.
Yeah.
They were reading a lot of headlines. I felt like, okay, yeah, the Packers game wasn't close, but once they settled down and realized, whoa, this defense is destroying us and Aaron Jones is running all over us, I thought you saw a little bit of the Cowboys that you would want to see. I think if you had Tyron Smith back in there, they could win the NFC East. And you're telling me, you think I'm crazy? They can win the NFC East because the Eagles have flaws too. And if they win the NFC East, it's not like there's the Patriots and the Chiefs in the NFC. There's a lot of good teams, but there's no dominant team. I feel like we're giving up on the Cowboys too soon. Get Tyron Smith back in there.
It is a little breeze. It's a little breeze in here. Because I think that guy Drew Brees will be back, and I think Devontae Adams eventually his toe.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Saints. Like I think the Saints are real. Like I think what we've seen from the Saints is real. I'm really interested to see what Kellen Moore does now because I think he had the advantage the first 3 weeks of the season, and we see this with new coaches.
We got data.
I got all of this stuff in my bag that I've been waiting my whole career to pull out, and here's this, and here's that, and here's that. And now all of a sudden, what did the Packers and the Saints have the last 2 weeks? They had tape.
Yep.
And so they can look at what Kellen Moore is throwing at them. Okay, we're going to make an adjustment. And to me, it's the same thing as like, when you get a quarterback out there and you're doing things to make him comfortable, it's a second adjustment that I think is really going to tell you who the quarterback is. It's like, okay, he's going to throw something at you. The offense is going to throw something at you with this new quarterback. The defense is going to figure it out, and now can you counterpunch? So can Kellen Moore, and I think it applies to offensive play callers too. Where is that Kellen Moore's counterpunch now?
Yeah, it's called a market correction, right? Because what happens is what we break down in the defensive play room, in the defensive room, meeting room, is your last 4 games. Well, they didn't have 4 games on Kellen Moore. Now they do. And people want to talk all about all these analytics in baseball. Well, we've always had these same analytics out of personnel, what they run, who's at the receiver, who's in the slot. We break all that stuff down. Now let's see if Kellen Moore is the boy wonder that people believe he is, because now people are on Dak and see what he can't do, and we're forcing him to do what he can't do on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
DM me now, Dallas fan. Holla at your boy, the real Bart Scott.
There it is. He's calling you out, guys. He's calling you out. High expectations for the Cowboys. There are a few teams that have exceeded expectations. Before the season, the Bills, the Niners, and the Lions weren't exactly generating a ton of buzz, but here we are 5 weeks in, and those 3 have just 2 losses between them. So, Andrew, which of these 3 will we still be talking about when we get to December?
Well, a big part of this is a function of schedule. I mean, let's face it, Buffalo, that's as soft a 4-1 as you get, but they have the easiest strength of schedule remaining. They have, maybe the Jets will get better, but they have the Jets and the Dolphins.
Should have lost the first game.
They're going to build to 9 or 10 wins, which they did. Remember the year Tyrod Taylor led them there. I think they're a wild card team just based on schedule. But let's face it, Josh Allen, 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. He needs to really develop. I know he's a very good runner, but their passing game isn't there. The Niners are absolutely legit in my mind. I mean, we had referred to them. That defensive front is right there. And then the Lions have all the ingredients, but again, look at where they have to play, the NFC North. They got to face the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings. So the Lions play a lot of close games, and sometimes they win in a fluky game, sometimes they lose. That's my only concern. I think they're a very good team. I think Stafford makes enough plays, but I worry about their division and their schedule.
Bart, those three, who's for real?
I think it's the Lions. Why do we talk about the Lions or talk about Matthew Stafford like, oh, he can do well? This is a guy that's thrown consistently over 5,000 yards with the worst ran organization in the history of football. Listen, I love Matt Millen, but come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm from Detroit. I don't remember winning a Thanksgiving game since I was 8.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. All my turkey was always horrible on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know, they haven't had a team since Brett Perriman, Herman Moore, and Johnny Morton and Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, now what they have is they have a program.
Yeah.
They have a program, and they have guys that are bought in. They didn't buy in earlier on Patricia's program. It was a lot of infighting. He got rid of those type of players. I think Snacks makes them legitimate because now you can't just push them around anymore. Big play Slay is there. And I feel like, they finally have the right balance around Matthew Stafford. They paid attention to running the football and being a physical team in the trenches. And finally, I think they're ready to make that next step. And I think they're the second best team within that division. Are you buying into the Kirk Cousins therapy session with Thielen and Diggs? I'm not buying into that, and I never believed in Chicago Bears and what they had there with. I mean, we have certain quarterbacks in the league that we didn't want to knock out.
Yep.
And I believe that Mitch Trubisky is one of those quarterbacks. It's like you hit him.
Help him up.
Yo, my bad. I'm sorry. Was that too hard? Yo, that's okay, man. Good play, big dog. You want him in there because he's just good enough to throw you one. Right? So, I mean, I feel like when you think about that, when you look at that division, this is a quarterback league. Who has the second best quarterback in that division?
I mean, I think it's absolutely the Lions, yeah. And I'll tell you this, I think all three have a chance. And the reason why is what we discussed earlier when we were talking about the Browns. They're built through the lines of scrimmage. They've invested in the lines of scrimmage. I think if you're built there, you're going to be in every game because that's where the game is won and lost. And so look at what these teams did in the offseason, right, or the last couple of off seasons. The Lions drafting Frank Ragnow and Taylor Decker, paying Trey Flowers, going and getting Mike Daniels. The Bills drafting Ed Oliver, signing Mitch Morris, signing Ty Nsekhe, bringing in Deion Dawkins a couple of years ago to play left tackle. The Niners, right, drafting Mike McGlinchey and signing Weston Richburg on offense. 5 first-round picks on the defensive line. All of these teams are built through the lines of scrimmage.
Ready for D Ford.
I will say this. I think of the three, the team with the highest ceiling right now is San Francisco. Because I just think I look at their team speed, and I look, again, at those lines of scrimmage. When they get Joe Staley back, that offensive line is a legitimate strength. And that defensive line, I mean, man, to be able to bring D Ford, DeForest Buckner, Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, Eric Armstead, to be able to come in waves at people that way, it's very, very hard to deal with for other teams.
You have that bridge in Kawhi Alexander. You need somebody that can transfer. It's like the stomach, the abdomen. It's the most important part, right? You need somebody that can communicate with the front end and backside, and he's fast. He's an elite player in space. And Shermer's just good enough, savvy enough, and you see that they play a lot of cover 3, which is what he's very comfortable at. And those are one of those bend, don't break, don't give up any big plays because we want you sitting off 15 yards because we believe in Bosa and Ford in that defensive line in which we've invested in. The only problem that I would say is once people figure out they don't have enough elite talent on the outsides to scare anybody. So if I feel like I can lock you up and stop your run and put it in Jimmy G's hands, I feel like I got a shot.
You stop Kittle, you stop Breida, then what?
All right, well, another team that seems to be hitting their stride, the Green Bay Packers. They're hot on both sides of the ball. So right now, here's our own Ryan Aselta with Packers beat writer from The Athletic, Matt Schneidman.
All right, thanks, guys. Maybe the biggest surprise of Week 5 was the Packers going to Dallas and really dominating the Cowboys on their home turf. Green Bay is now 4-1 and sits atop the NFC North. For more on the Pack, we welcome in Packers beat writer for The Athletic, Matt Schneidman. And Matt, take us inside the Packers locker room Sunday night. Not only do they go to Dallas and manhandle them, but they do it in their own building of the Cowboys. What was that mood like on Sunday night?
Yeah, it was a raucous locker room environment. I mean, obviously the Packers probably expected to win, but nobody on the outside did, especially without Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones rushing for 4 touchdowns in his home state. He's went to El Paso, University of Texas, El Paso. After the game, Matt LaFleur gave Aaron Jones the game ball, career high 4 touchdowns, career high 182 yards from scrimmage, 105 rushing, 77 receiving. And he gave it right to his offensive lineman. He said this wouldn't have been possible without you guys. So he threw it to rookie left guard Elton Jenkins across the locker room, and they gave it right back to him. So he got his first ever game ball. And it's just a really happy time, to put it succinctly, here in Green Bay. 4-1, a couple big road wins at Chicago, at Dallas, a couple primetime games coming up in the next couple weeks against the Lions and Chiefs. So really raucous, and they're really glad to get the win on the road against a pretty good Dallas team with an extra day of rest coming up this week.
Yeah, and the offense really seems to be progressing at this point, scoring more points each week than the last. How would you describe what Coach Matt LaFleur has established with this team right now?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think the offense has really clicked yet. They have scored more points or the same in every game than they did the week prior. So they've gone 10, 21, 27, 27, and 34. And we saw last week Aaron Rodgers really making plays with his feet and his arm. The running game couldn't get going. This week, without Davante Adams, their best receiver, the running game gets going. So we're still waiting for the Packers to marry the pass game and the run game. And it should be scary for other teams in the NFL that the Packers are 4-1 and they haven't really played their best offensive game yet. I think Matt LaFleur's offense is still kind of morphing its identity, but you see Aaron Rodgers still able to make plays with his feet, tremendous pocket awareness as he showed yesterday. And if they get the running game going, Aaron Rodgers is always going to get the passing game going. You never have to doubt that he'll eventually kick it into high gear. But the real question was, can they use Aaron Jones in the running game and the pass game, as Matt LaFleur likes to do with running backs? And yesterday, it was the best example yet, and you saw the results.
Yeah, it was a coming out party for running back Aaron Jones. He erupts for the 4 touchdowns, 107 yards on the ground, and 7 catches as well, receiving the ball. How is LaFleur using Jones differently than Mike McCarthy, who couldn't figure out the best way to use him when he was there?
Yeah, he's really using him more outside the tackles as a receiver, and Aaron Jones is so skilled as a receiver. He spent pretty much all offseason in El Paso working on his hands. He had high school quarterbacks from the area throwing passes to him, purposely throwing bad passes to him, and then he would take them out to the movies afterward as a thank you. He knows Matt LaFleur likes to get running backs outside the tackles, get them involved in the passing game. And while Aaron Jones has shown an ability to catch some passes, yesterday was the first time we really saw it effectively. I believe he had 7 catches for 75 yards. He was making shoestring catches, making linebackers miss. Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, 2 of the best linebackers in the game. Aaron Jones was dominating them in the passing game. So that's kind of how LaFleur has really envisioned using Aaron Jones. And we hadn't really seen that vision materialize until yesterday.
Now, Matt, we've made it halfway through here without really talking about Aaron Rodgers a whole lot, which is amazing. Now in his 15th season, has he embraced this new role of not having to do everything to make the Packers offense function?
Yeah, I think so. And you really see him happy. I've obviously only been covering this team for a couple months, but the guys who have been covering it for decades said, he's way happier than he is in the past. I don't know if it's because they're winning, because he has a head coach he actually likes now, but there's a lot of pressure off him, and I think that starts with the defense. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to go out there and single-handedly win every game. His defense has intercepted the second most passes. They have the best turnover margin in the NFL, and when your defense is making plays like that and stealing you the ball and gaining you possession, especially as they did yesterday when the Cowboys were on the verge of scoring a touchdown, if not a field goal, that makes it a lot easier on the quarterback, knowing that you don't have to save the day. Because in past Green Bay years, they've ranked outside the top 20 for the past 3 seasons in scoring defense. I believe 21st, 22nd, and 26th the past 3 seasons. This year, they've been one of the best defenses in the league and really played well outside, I would say, the fourth quarter yesterday and the Eagles game in the second half of the game against the Eagles. So really nice welcome surprise. I don't want to say surprise, but a welcome compliment to Aaron Rodgers and what he can do, that the Packers actually have a defense this year.
How about that relationship between LaFleur and Rodgers? Everyone hopped on board early saying there were problems trying to read body language on the sidelines. How would you describe the relationship between the two?
It's going well so far, and I mean, winning cures everything, right? As cliche as that sounds, I think they're getting along. I think everyone loves to pick apart the sideline interactions they have. I believe the one we saw was against the Vikings, where everyone went at it and they were kind of barking at each other. But there haven't been any hiccups so far. You know, if they go on a couple game losing streak, we'll see if there is any tension. But Rodgers really likes the freedom he has in this offense. I'm not saying Mike McCarthy didn't give him any freedom, but nothing has really changed. Matt LaFleur's offense is predicated more on making plays from the pocket as opposed to purposely practicing plays off schedule, which Mike McCarthy did. But Rodgers can really do either. He's one of the best ever at creating plays when they break down. But LaFleur's offense really allows him to operate from the pocket, and we saw what he can do in that regard yesterday. So no tension yet, but after all, we are only 5 games into the season.
Yeah, Matt Schneidman of The Athletic coming to us from Happy Town, Green Bay, Wisconsin right now. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
All right, let's send it back over to Andrew, Albert, and Bart.
And now it's time for the return of everyone's favorite segment. That's Andrew Perloff's 3-step drop. Andrew, take it away.
All right, I love that the NFL trade deadline is now a thing. Last year we saw lots of movement, especially a wide receiver. So I'm going to throw out 3 scenarios, and you guys let me know if these seem at all realistic. Let's start with Cincinnati. We know they're bad. Will they have a fire sale and trade either A.J. Green or tight end Tyler Eifert to the Patriots?
I like the idea for the Patriots. I do think the idea of trading for a receiver is on their radar. I think part of the Antonio Brown thing was they had a little bit more of a need than maybe the general public figured. And so I do think that that's something they'll look at. Emmanuel Sanders' name, I think, is going to be in play for them. We've obviously heard about Stefon Diggs' situation in Minnesota. I love the idea of A.J. Green in New England. I think it would make some sense. I love the idea of Tyler Eifert in New England. I think it would make some sense.
Yeah.
I just don't know that the Bengals are going to do it, Bart. I mean, that's such an old school organization. Right. The owner's older. They've got a new coaching staff in there, but a lot of the scouting infrastructure is the same. They just, unless there's a gun to their head, and the Carson Palmer situation is the one I'm thinking of, where they got offered a huge package, a 1 and a 2 for him. There's just no history of the Bengals being active in this sort of way. So there are guys on the roster who I'd absolutely call about. Green, Eifert, Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap. There are older guys in that roster that I think are really attractive. I'm just not sure that the Bengals are going to engage anybody in those.
And also engaging with someone in the AFC as well.
Yeah.
I would think that if they want to work with somebody, they want to work with somebody in the NFC. And the team that comes to mind for me is the New Orleans Saints, because the Saints are all in. And they really struggle for not having really a second receiver, a second target for Breeze. You think that A.J. Green is a guy that's respected. He's been injured, but he's a guy that's been respected. We saw last year when they tried to make the trade for Demaryius Thomas, and they were entertaining the thought of Dez Bryant. We've seen them, mortgage the future for the present, because I feel like they're trying to get Drew Brees, really trying to get Drew Brees that second championship, which will put him in rarefied air, which you can make the argument that he will surpass Peyton Manning as far as the Mount Rushmore quarterbacks. Yeah. If you get a guy like A.J. Green, knowing that, hey, eventually maybe that Drew Brees will ride off into the sunset if he wins, you reset the market because he has a $40 million cap hit on the on the salary cap next year. You insert Teddy Bridgewater, you have A.J. Green for a couple years. Now you can go out and spend some little bit more money, so it's not really about what you're going to draft, because now you have money to go buy.
A.J. Green and Mike Thomas would be pretty scary together, too.
But A.J. Green's a different cat. He might want to stay in Cincinnati. Yeah. I know that sounds weird, but I know he loves it.
I think he wants to win for his legacy, though.
Well, we'll see. You say that about A.J. Green. He really loves
everybody
Cincinnati.
Loves Sean Payton. And if you're going to leave and go anywhere, you talk about somebody who has an outstanding reputation. You talk about going to a place that's a legitimate Super Bowl contender, not just this year, but going forward. And you know that Sean Payton's going to be there for a long time. What I think A.J. Green or a player like A.J. Green would want, stability.
Yeah. I wondered about the draft capital of the Saints, too. But next trade, you mentioned Emmanuel Sanders. I was also floating him to the Patriots, who, of course, tried to sign him a couple years ago. I'm amazed. Emmanuel Sanders tore his Achilles in December. Yeah. And he was such a great player last year. He's back. He is so effective. Do you think teams are sniffing around Denver?
I think he makes sense. I think, again, this is one of those, you got a coach in Vic Fangio in his 60s. You got John Elway. He turns 60 next year. He's been there a while. I think it's difficult for those guys to wrap their head around a fire sale. So I think so much of this is going to depend on what happens the next 2 or 3 weeks and whether or not they're in the race when we get to the end of October. If they've got a sniff of being in the race, I think that they probably will stick with the team they have. They were able to go into Los Angeles, get a win over the Chargers on Sunday. If they win 2 of their next 3, I think it might be tough to get guys out of there. If they lose their next 3 in a row, I think teams are going to call about Sanders. I think teams are going to call about Chris Harris. I think teams are going to call about Adam Gostis. The one that I think is that you would like everybody would think about is Von Miller.
Yeah.
I just don't know that they trade him just because he's almost like a quarterback in status there because they don't have that sort of guy at that position.
Yeah, but to go to the Denver Broncos right now and Emmanuel Sanders, where he really doesn't make sense to me going to New England because he's going to occupy the same space as Julian Edelman, and you got Flash Gordon out there. I like more of a vertical big receiver. They need another big receiver, a vertical guy, because they have the guys that can work the intermediate routes. And I know Sanders can do that too. He has shown that he can go vertical, but I like, Emmanuel Sanders maybe to a team that needs more slot help because I feel like that's the easier play to, we all hear about New England, how difficult it is to pick up the system. Chad Johnson struggled with it a little bit. Antonio Brown was still trying to figure it out. But when you go there, I think about, Chris Harrison, like you said, you always need more corners. And I know that this is the perfect time to do a reset. I mean, because you can get good pretty fast. And I don't think that Joe Flacco's a long-term solution there. I don't think that,
Drew Lock
is. Yeah. We got the Tua, Herbert, Fromm sweepstakes coming.
Yeah.
And this team could potentially, if they don't win the next couple games, could just go into tank mode. And what better way to say that you're not tanking, you're still trying, than to start trading off some of your assets. At this point, Von Miller is a finishing piece to a championship. He's already tutored and mentored his replacement in Chubb. Chubb is out this year, but he'll come back. He'll be able to take that role. And you can be able to get some right now, you can still get a 1 for Von Miller.
Oh, no question.
So Von Miller's a finishing piece. And I feel like if you get rid of Chris Harris, you get rid of Von Miller, you get rid of Emmanuel Sanders, then you potentially could have another number 1 and 2 number 2s, and you're going to have a bad draft pick. So you may be in a sweepstakes from Tua and be able to snatch him out of the jaws of life from the Miami Dolphins.
Okay, last trade, Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if anybody has enough assets to get him. Let's throw out the Eagles. Talking about a finishing piece. Yep. Where do the Jaguars stand right now with star cornerback?
So my understanding, like the initial asking price was either 2 1s or a 1, another high pick, and a player. My sense is they weren't quite initially able to get what they wanted to get for him, and I think the owners now intervened, and so now I think it's for the owner. It's if I'm not getting top return here, then I may have to veto a trade because the way he's got to look at it is this is my top player, this is my best player. Yep. This is a guy who I can help, who I can build a defense around.
Right.
And similar to like the way your Jet defenses were built with Revis, right? Mm-hmm. So why would it make sense for me to get rid of Jalen Ramsey based on his relationship with Tom Coughlin and Doug Marrone?
So you're saying they're going to go?
When I don't know if they're going to be there in 2020. And so I think if you're Shad Khan, it's either I'm getting a huge return for him or I'm going to make them ride this out, and then I'm going to let whoever's the next coach, whoever's the next EVP of football ops, make that decision.
Yeah.
So I think that that's sort of where they're at right now. As for who's in the running, the Eagles dip their toe in the water, and everybody can't rule them out. I'd also keep an eye on the Kansas City Chiefs. That will be a team that I think would sort of sniff around a little bit on him. Look, he's a great player, man. He's a great player. Yeah. I don't know if you give up 2 1s for him.
Nobody's worth 2 1s. That's not a guy that's a pass rusher. Aaron Darnold, you give up 2 1s for. Maybe Khalil Mack, you give up 2 1s for.
I mean, Laramie Tunsil got 2 1s.
Yeah, but I mean, that is a desperate team that knows that they're in a window with J.J. Watt and they have a quarterback that they don't have to pay for a couple of years. I'm looking at, and that's a fire sale. They were looking to get anything. The team that was trying to do that was a fire sale, in the Miami Dolphins that's trying to just acquire as many draft picks. So, they'll give up anything. But Ramsey, I'm not trading for a player that I have to pay next year.
Yep.
I'm going to give up 2 1s and break the bank? No. I trade you give up 2 1s for a player that you have under control. Like Tunsil, right? That's still on a rookie deal. I mean, you have to franchise him next year or either give him a big contract. So I'm not going to give up 2 1s and spend a bunch of money at the same time. But I can just wait for him. And if you want to play that franchise tag game, and this guy says, hey, in 1 week he was sick, his girl had a baby, and his back hurts.
Tough week.
Like, he can continue to make this up. I stubbed my toe. I can't see. I got glaucoma. Right.
Pull out all the excuses from the second grade.
But he showed that he's willing to use those tactics.
Yeah.
See, we've always assumed that what if a player says they're sick or their hamstring hurts? You can't prove those type of things. But he's proven that he's willing to use those excuses, knowing that they can't be proven.
Yep.
All right, quick hitter. Any of these three guys get dealt? Stefon Diggs of the Vikings, Trent Williams of the Redskins, and I'll throw his name out, Larry Fitzgerald of the Cardinals.
No. I think Trent Williams, to me, that thing has gotten personal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he gets traded until after the year at the earliest, because I do think that this has turned into a grudge thing.
Yeah.
I think when you wage war against a team's medical side, like the teams take that stuff very personally. And so I think that this has turned into Bruce Allen versus Trent Williams. I'm not saying who's right or wrong here. I'm just telling you, I think that that's part of it. Stefon Diggs, to me, it makes no sense for the Vikings to trade him unless they're getting something huge in return. He's 25 years old. He's under contract through 2023. You've got a team that is full of players that are in their prime right now today. Yep. You go through the list: Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph's at the end of his career, Anthony Barr, Donnell Hunter, like Xavier Rhodes. You've got all of these players that are right in the middle of their prime. It doesn't make sense to sell off a part, particularly because they have no depth at that position. And then Larry Fitz, he's too much of an icon in Arizona. I think unless he comes to you and asks for it, you give him the courtesy of allowing him to finish up in Arizona.
He seems like he's a guy that wants to have the pride to say, hey, I played in one place, because he could have asked for his walking papers, and I feel like they would have did the right thing by him a long time ago. But I want to go to Trent Williams, and he's dug in. Yeah. And if I'm the owner, I veto it because I see what's happening, right? I'm hopefully going to be able to get Alex Smith off the books. If I can dump a 32-year-old left tackle, although he's great, how many more years we expect for him to perform at a high level? Maybe 2 years. Yeah. But at that point, my young quarterback is only going to be in his second year. We won't be ready to win right now anyway. You can turn this team from an old team with Alex Smith and Reed and Trent Williams and turn it to a young team and make it exciting again by going out and getting modern-day players and building your roster a different way. They really messed up. And really the fireable offense, to me, for Allen, is the fact that he gave $85 million to Collins within the division, and they gladly gave him away. Like, that was the move I feel like is going to cost him, because he's got exposed, and they gave bad contracts out. He's giving out bad contract after bad contract. So, listen, I'm saying, if I'm the owner, Dan Snyder, we know he likes to get involved. I'm saying, you know what? You may not be here. Get him traded. Get me back a number one, so now I can have a number one, and I'm going to have another bad number one. And hopefully they don't go and they give Haskins a real chance and don't flirt with Tua.
Yeah, well, Tua Bowl 1 is on Sunday. Dolphins, Redskins, right?
Man.
So it's going to be, if you're the Redskins, though, you wind up with the first pick, you like Haskins, you could wind up getting a lot for the first pick, too. So you're talking about potentially having one for Trent Williams.
People want to move up.
And then you could move down.
You could be John Gruden. We see how it worked out for Gruden.
You could Google Josh Rosen. I'm just saying,
I like Rosen. Now,
he got traded after 1 year.
I'll tell you what, if I'm the Chicago Bears,
yes,
I'm making a phone call. At
this point, you can probably get Rosen for a 3.
Oh, but my point was, teams will move on from a first-round pick quick. If Haskins gets in there as a new coach next year, I'm not saying it's impossible.
If you're trying, it's not impossible. If you're trying to trade, if you feel like Bart does about Dak, the Cowboys trade for Rosen.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know.
Cowboys, Tampa, or Tennessee.
Lots of interesting ideas there. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Hot takey.
We're going to take a break from football reality and take a look into the world of fantasy football right now with Sports Illustrated's fantasy expert, Bill Enright.
Hey, I'm SI fantasy analyst Bill Enright here to bring you the guys you should start and the guys you should sit on the bench as we head into week 6 of the NFL season. Now remember, we always start our studs. I'm not going to give you the obvious players. I'm going to go with the guys that maybe you're on a fence and you want to be pushed one way or the other, starting off with the quarterbacks. Kyler Murray is taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Murray hasn't thrown a touchdown in his last 2 games, but he'll throw multiple touchdowns in week 6 because he's playing against the Falcons. And everyone throws multiple touchdowns against Atlanta. Falcons have allowed 10 passing touchdowns in their last 3 games, so fire up the Arizona Cardinals rookie quarterback. How about a running back? Carlos Hyde is taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are allowing the 6th most points to running backs, and over their last 3 games, they gave up at least 150 rushing yards to opposing running backs. It's a bit of a revenge game for Carlos Hyde, who was cut by the Kansas City Chiefs just a few days before the season started. Hyde is coming off a 20-carry game, and he scored for the second time in his last 3 outings. He's a solid flex play in week number 6. Over to wide receiver, I'm focusing on Jarvis Landry of the Cleveland Browns as they take on the Seattle Seahawks. Landry is the only consistent playmaker on the Browns not named Nick Chubb. You could forget about Odell Beckham Jr. You could forget about Baker Mayfield. Jarvis Landry is the only viable option in this Cleveland passing attack. Hey, look at what Cooper Kupp just did against the Seattle secondary, playing from the slot, burned him for over 100 yards, had multiple, over 10 catches and a touchdown, and that's where Landry will make his money in week number 6. Finally, a tight end to start. That's Jared Cook as he takes on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cook has 12 targets in his last 2 games. He's coming off a solid 4-catch, 41 yards, and a touchdown performance in week number 5. And his quarterback, not Teddy Bridgewater, not Drew Brees, but Teddy Bridgewater is playing great. And outside of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook is really the only New Orleans playmaker in that passing attack. So there are your stardoms. Now let's move over to the guys who you should be riding the bench this week. Starting off with a quarterback, Gardner Minshew. I'm sick of the Minshew mania. It comes to an end this week as he travels to the Superdome in New Orleans, where only one quarterback has had over 300 yards against the Saints all season long. Minshew is coming off a career game, 374 yards, but he's not going to come near that mark as he takes on the Saints in week number 6. Adrian Peterson, a running back that needs to be on the bench against the Miami Dolphins this week. Listen, I'll be honest with you, I don't want anything to do with the battle of these winless teams. Peterson takes on the Dolphins in a battle of really who's going to get the number 1 pick in 2020. Peterson has 40 carries in his last 4 games, but he has just 108 yards. That's terrible. Peterson and the Redskins are just a disaster, and it's not even midway through the season. A wide receiver, and this one pains me. It really hurts my heart because Juju, I love you, man, but listen, you got to be on the bench this week. Juju Smith-Schuster of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not catching passes from Ben Roethlisberger. He's not even catching passes from Mason Rudolph. He's catching passes from Delvin Hodges. He played at Samford, not Stanford, Samford. I had to look it up. So no Juju Smith-Schuster against the Chargers in week 6. Finally, a tight end, O.J. Howard against the Carolina Panthers. What happened to this Buccaneers promising tight end? Just 11 catches in 4 games, 11 of them. Chris Godwin had 11 catches in week 4, and that's more than Howard has had all season. It's sad. It's frustrating. But Howard is turning out to be one of the biggest busts of the year. And that's your week 6 start 'em sit 'em. Good luck, everybody.
All right, guys, let's get into our way too early picks that we will not be held to. But first, let's recap how we did last week. Andrew went 3-1, Bart 2-2, and I went 2-2 also. The leaderboard now brings me to 7-13. Bart's at 10-10. Andrew, you're 13-7.
If you guys want a copy off this paper, you are allowed. I can help you out this week.
I need some help. I need some help.
Me coming.
I'll have a good excuse next week, okay? I haven't thought one up yet. I'll have a good excuse next week. Okay, we're going to start this week. This week's slate of games, as we always do with Thursday Night Football. The Giants at New England. The Patriots are a whopping 16.5-point favorite. Bart, do we like New England to cover at home?
Ooh, that's a lot of cheese on that taco right there. 16.5. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and ride with them because, no Saquon Barkley, potentially no Evan Ingram.
Yep.
I feel like they really confused it. We know what Bill Belichick's record is against young quarterbacks. Market correction happened last week with Minnesota. This team is bad. They're not physical at the point of attack. Tom Brady's going to smoke them out, and they're going to run the ball and just take the air out of the game. So I'm going to go with that. I think, Daniel Jones struggles mightily.
Yeah, every day I read a new Giant skill position player is out, so that's obviously the key factor.
Shepard.
But I wonder if New England's seeing some of the headlines that they've looked anemic, even though they scored 30-something points against Washington, they've looked anemic on offense. I hope they let it loose a little bit here. I just worry the fact that they let the Jets come back and get a backdoor cover, but I looked at their spread history is great out of division in these big favorite games. I'm going with New England.
I also think Thursday Night Football, a lot of it is about the competency of your coaching staff. And if you've got good coaches, they've got a plan for it. They're ready when it comes. You hit the ground running. When you show up at the building on Monday, you're ready to go on Thursday night. And so I think that this is one of those spots where Belichick's advantage goes from maybe this to this.
Plus it's the
And-
Eli Bowl. They never forget that you beat me in the Super Bowl twice, and y'all always bring
And
it
Eli-
up. So now I'm about, we all know that Belichick takes things personal.
Eli's his kryptonite, though.
Why'd they play Eli on Thursday? Just
They
bring
should
him
play-
in.
They
Just
should
let-
throw Eli out.
Put in the Eli package.
No
Yes.
Eli, yeah,
The all
Eli
shucks package.
yeah.
They'll probably do the all shucks
The slowest Wildcat package of all time.
Yeah. So, look, Belichick versus a rookie quarterback, Belichick on a short week. I don't know how the Giants are going to score on them without Ingram and Shepard and Barkley. I mean, to me, this looks like something like 24-3, 27-7. The Giants' defense isn't very
Who's
good.
that running back? They're on the backup to the backup at
Yeah,
running back,
I
too.
mean, I can't even name their running
Gallman
back.
got
Take the Patriots to cover. Our next game is Sunday afternoon between the Texans and the Chiefs. Kansas City is favored by 5 at home. Can Deshaun Watson and the Texans take one on the road, Andrew?
How is Patrick Mahomes' ankle? Can you tell me that? Okay. The Houston Texans, talking about a Jekyll and Hyde team. 1 week, I mean, they're not going to protect Deshaun Watson. When they do, he's going to throw a bunch of touchdowns on you.
Yep.
I feel like the Chiefs' defense responds here. We did see a little bit of, in the loss of the Colts, Tyrann Mathieu is a star again. I feel like the Chiefs come up with enough defensive plays to sort of mess with that offensive line of the Texans, and their defense actually helps them cover in this game.
I think another market correction, right? You look at, the cornerbacks and Steve Spagnuolo, he's always been considered, or people think that he's a genius. I think that the Houston Texans being able to spread these guys out and throw the ball down the field. I forget was it Flowers that they got from Seattle?
Yep.
He hasn't really shown up and had the impact that he had when he was in Seattle. So I think
Frank Clark, yeah.
Frank Clark. Yeah, Frank Clark. I don't know why I got Flowers. Yeah, Frank Clark. So I think it's just market correction. I think that Deshaun Watson is going to be able to really get up for these big games. We know that he's a big game player. He looks at Mahomes as somebody who's getting all the shine, as one of the brightest young quarterbacks, and he wants that spot. I think he puts on the show, and I just think that J.J. Watt and his inability, to be able to be protected in Mahomes, really makes him a sitting duck with that lame ankle.
First of all, I love the matchup. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. One of the things that I think people aren't paying attention to, because a lot of people just saw the Texans in the opener and think that things haven't changed. The offensive line's playing a lot better. They've got Titus Howard, where they see him long-term at right tackle. They've got Max Sharping, where they see him long-term at guard. That's their first-round pick and their second-round pick, and then they've got Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. They've essentially fixed their offensive line issue. It cost them a lot to get there, but they've essentially fixed it. I'm not sure if they're going to win this game, but I think it's going to be close. And so that means for me, on the road, I'm taking the Texans to cover the 5. So, again, I think this is a fantastic
opportunity to gain ground.
Fantastic showcase for the league. And I think the Texans take advantage of some of the Chiefs' injury situations with their receivers banged up, their defensive tackles banged up. Texans get the cover and maybe the win. Okay, on Sunday night, the Steelers visit the Chargers. LA is favored by 7. Can the Steelers come away with the win, with Mason Rudolph most likely out for this matchup part?
Who's the backup? Is it
Devlin
Dobbs?
Hodges,
But
yeah.
they traded Dobbs, Devlin Hodges. That defense, I do like that defense. But, Phillip Rivers had a bad week last week. They got embarrassed. Lost to Denver. Mm-hmm. He didn't play, well. He threw an interception in the end zone. Mason Rudolph, man, that was a tough thing to watch.
Yeah.
But even with that, I just think that the Chargers in their house, Phillip Rivers, it's a quarterback's game. I go with the best quarterback. I think the Chargers get it done and cover.
I've been watching the Chargers this season asking me, how can they be this bad? They really have not played well last week. But, I mean, come on. All you need is a half of Devlin Hodges on tape. You're telling me that they can't adjust and take advantage of that Pittsburgh situation? I just keep thinking back to that Minkah Fitzpatrick trade that they gave away the first-round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, who might be a great young player. But it seems like everything's going on with Pittsburgh. I'm taking the Chargers to cover.
I'm going to take the Steelers to cover. Again, I don't know if they win. The Chargers are pretty banged up.
Yeah.
I mean, no Russell Okung, no Derwin James. And I think we've seen them make it through these injury situations in the past. It feels to me like they're having a little bit of a harder time with it this year. And so I think the Steelers keep it close because their defense is getting better. And I really think that maybe quietly they're turning the corner a little bit defensively. We saw how they handled Lamar Jackson, kept him in check last week. they do have young players, good young players in that group. Devin Bush, like you said, Minkah Fitzpatrick. They've still got that D-line. They've got T.J. Watt coming off the edge. It feels to me like it's almost a shame, and I know it's not a shame for you because you're a Raven, but it's almost a shame that Ben isn't healthy because we won't really get to see where this team's ceiling is. Right. Because I do think for the first time in a long time, the defense is actually formidable.
Do you guys take Melvin Gordon as a factor?
I think
he gets a lot of carries with the Chargers.
He should get better.
That fix him up a little bit?
Well, running back Bart's a rhythm position, right?
and it takes probably a couple of weeks. I think he's still a couple of more weeks to being able to have his running back legs, his sea legs underneath him. But I just love Phillip Rivers in these type of spots, and he's starting to look mortal. Yeah. The end is coming. It's close. I feel like he's closer to the end than Ben Roethlisberger. I feel like Ben has a little bit more juice left than Phillip. Phillip is starting to turn old. He's starting to turn old before our very eyes, and his lack of mobility, is starting to really really hinder the team.
Okay. Lastly, as we always do, we're going to do the line that you love. Andrew, who you got? What line do you love this week?
Okay, I like the Falcons over the Cardinals. Oh, okay, the Cardinals beat the Bengals, who are even worse than their record, which is hard because they don't have a win. Atlanta, I've done this a lot with the Falcons. This is a desperation game, and they've had a few of these, and they haven't showed up. But I mean, they're a more talented team. They should, be a more veteran team. I think that they're playing their hardest this game, and they beat the Cardinals rather easily.
I'm going to go with the Jets to cover over the Cowboys because we got the good news that Darnold's cleared to play. I know we saw Falk take 9. I think it was officially 9. They said it was 10, but 9 sacks, and they look bad. But Darnold really, I think, makes the difference, being able to get the ball out on the hot routes because teams have been really just smothering the line of scrimmage with 8 or 9 players and really disrespecting the quarterback position to find the hot. He gets Herndon back, which is his security blanket, a player that he had tremendous chemistry with, near the end of last year. Okay. And I just think that maybe the Cowboys are going to be coming in, and they kind of circled this, and they looked at a lot of the scores, but secretly, the defense has been giving up like 14 points a game. I think Quinnen Williams coming back makes him a little bit more healthier. Greg Williams can devise enough plays to really try and slow Ezekiel Elliott down. And I think that Dak is going to struggle, but I think they still may come with the win, but I just don't see them covering the 8.
Wow, Jets keep it close. I'm going to take the Niners. I think what we saw on Monday night was real. Yeah. I think that's a very fast team. I think it's a very well-coached team. I think there's a lot of good going on in San Francisco. They're a 4.5-point dog at Los Angeles. Ooh. I think that game's going to be a dogfight. I think it's a great game. I think it's a good slate of games this week. I think that's Niners at Rams is a dogfight. I think it's a 3-point game either way. So give me the Niners to cover the 4.5. Okay, before we get out of here, I want to give a special shout out to our old producer, John DePietro. John poured a lot into this show the last couple of years. With me personally, I worked hand in hand with him for the last 3.5 years. Did an awesome job. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for John. Really put a lot of work into what we do here. So thank you for everything, John. And that'll do it for another edition of the MMQB TV. For Bart and Andrew, I'm Albert Breer. Enjoy Week 6 in the NFL, everybody.